All right. Hey, thank you, Carl. My name is Chris. I'm an alcoholic, and it is really a pleasure to be here. Carl and I bump into each other at different places, and it's good to see your face, Carl, in this time of lockdown. Where we're just not getting around. Um, Zoom has been a great thing, and I'm worried that it's going to be too good of a thing. We can talk more about that later. But anyway, I'm an alcoholic. I understand what alcoholism is today. On or around December 28th, 1989, I separated from alcohol. There was what I believe was going on was there was some divine interaction there, because I really was an alcoholic of the hopeless variety at that point in time. I would swear off alcohol in the morning and be drunk in the afternoon at that point in time. So for me to be able to separate from alcohol, and that was a big deal. That's a big deal, and I see that period of time as very pivotal. But I want to talk a little bit about alcoholism. Carl said, tell your story and talk about alcoholism. So those are the two things that I'm going to do now. You know, looking back on my life, I believe that there's certain things that are part of my alcoholism. Certain characteristics that I have, certain experiences that I have, really define alcoholism in me as a very, very young person. I've come to believe more over the years that alcoholism, there's something that we have in common. What we have in common is we have, for want of a better term, a spiritual vacancy. So there's something missing in us that enables us to feel right about right here, right now, doing this with these people. And, there was something different about me. And I think that does play a role in my alcoholism. So the first memory I have of this just feeling different and apart from you was when I was about 5 years old. I remember my mother came into the room and she said, "Get dressed. Today's your first day at kindergarten." And I'd heard about this kindergarten thing. Wasn't looking forward to it, but I'd heard about it, and so I get myself ready, and we go out to the car. And this is how long ago this was. It was a Packard Clipper car that I got in, and I get in the car, and she drives me across town, pulls up to a curb, points down this hill to a building and says, "That's where your kindergarten is. Get out of the car. I'll come back for you later." And she drives away. Now, I remember feeling unbelievably uncomfortable with this whole thing. And the crazy thing was, is I'm looking down the hill and all these kids are running around. They're playing tag, they're kickball. They've already assimilated into this kindergarten experience. And I am on the outside looking in. And I wanted to just run. I wanted to run home and, tell them this kindergarten thing was not a good idea. It's not going to work for me. But I knew if I tried to pull something like that, it would be a to-do at the house. So I did what I did for many, many years later. I acted as if I wasn't freaked out with this whole situation. And I went down and I did the kindergarten thing, and what does all this have to do with my alcoholism? It has a lot to do with my alcoholism, because it was years later that I discovered a liquid that would have made me the kindergarten kid. You know what I mean? Like if they were serving 5-year-olds pints of vodka, I'd been cool with this whole kindergarten thing. The problem was I was doing all this sober, and I had tons of self-centered fear. I was separate from you, and this was just kind of the way that I felt moving forward. Now fast forward, I think I was in 7th grade or something, and me and a couple of my buddies decide we're going to cut school and we're going to get drunk. Two things that were pretty cool. You know, we'd be able to brag about this later. And so that's what we did. We cut school and we went back to my house, and I got a chair out, and I reached up to the highest level of the cabinet, and I grabbed the bottle of Four Roses whiskey, and I pulled it down, and I blew the dust off of it, and we got about the business of drinking. I pulled out 3 water glasses, you know, like 16-ounce glasses, and started pouring the warm Four Roses whiskey into these water glasses. That's not how you drink Canadian whiskey when you're 13. But I didn't know that, right? Now here's the strange thing. Here's the thing that was really probably more amazing than what happened to me, because what happened to me probably happened to a lot of you. But what happened to the 2 guys I was drinking with? They drank about half or 2/3 of their glass, and they'd had enough of this alcohol experience. You know, they pushed the glass back and they kind of just watched the show. And because what happened with me was I drank my glass, I finished their glasses, I did damage to the rest of the bottle, and I went into my first blackout. And I came to in a field 5 hours later, you know, some kind of like weird time travel, you know, like 5 hours later, I wake up in a field not knowing how I got there. It's way later in the day. I've got no answers for, you know, what happened. And I stagger back to my house, and I proceed to be incredibly sick for like 2 days, just as sick as you can be. And while I'm sitting there, as sick as you can be, I'm thinking, my God, this alcohol, I'm going to work with this stuff. You know, like think about it. This is a food or a beverage that got me toxically ill for like 2 days. I had to remain horizontal. Why am I thinking about using it again? Why am I thinking about exposing myself to this again? And it's because of this, because somewhere right after the first drink, what happened was everything that was wrong in my life, every uncomfortable feeling that I had was made right. All of a sudden, I felt like I belonged. All of a sudden, I did not feel separate from you. All of a sudden, this vacancy that's within me that I can't even name is being filled, and I'm connected now, and I'm with my 2 brand new best friends. And isn't this cool? Isn't this great? This is great. And then I lost track of that experience because I went into a blackout. Now alcohol does something to anyone that drinks it, but alcohol does something for us as alcoholics. It gives us a new outlook and attitude on life. It takes away the fear and the anxiety. It makes us feel like we're a part of and we belong. And that's a valuable, valuable feeling. And for me at least, it was ingrained into my mind the first time I experienced it. Now, I'm 13 years old, right? So the drinking age was 21, so that was kind of problematic, but not insurmountable for someone as resourceful as myself. I started to figure out who was going to buy it for me, how I was going to get it, where it was going to come from. No Four Roses for me, thanks. I started to discover a wonderful series of products from the Boone's Farm Company. And I discovered Blackberry Brandy and Southern Comfort and Hoppengator. Anybody ever drink Hoppengator? Oh my God, all this stuff, and malt liquor and all this stuff that you avoid like the plague when you become a mature alcoholic, you know, because it's got like way too much sugar or it takes too much time. And so I started to become very preoccupied with alcohol. Now, the book Alcoholics Anonymous kind of paints a picture. It says that we cross a line. And what the line is it's a line into alcoholism. And and what the line is it's we go past the point where we can manage this alcohol through our own willpower. And I don't know where I crossed that line, because I crossed that line a long time before I was even interested in not drinking. But I believe that there was a period of time where I was preoccupied with alcohol. Now, I'm like 13. I'm just heading into high school, and all of a sudden, everything starts to be about the party. I start hanging out with different people. I start hanging out with the people that drink and use drugs. I start like not engaging in something that would get in the way of my drinking, like sports or something. I got involved in things, but I got involved in things that I could completely control and could drink doing. So I race motorcycles. You can do that drunk. It's not recommended if you're new or just coming back, but you can do it. And I did a lot of that, and I did crazy things. But when I look back, I always allowed myself the flexibility of being able to drink when I wanted to drink. Now, alcoholism is progressive, and it says it in our basic text that over any considerable period of time, it's going to get worse. It's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. How that looked like, how that presented in me was, every year that went by, on an almost daily basis, I would need to put more alcohol in my body. More ounces of alcohol would go in my body. It was a progression. And I could play all the head games I wanted with, switching to Budweiser from whiskey, and, using benzos and opiates to try to control the alcohol. I did all kinds of crazy stuff like that. But looking at it over any considerable period of time, more alcohol was going in my body every year that went by. And if you put the amount of alcohol that I was putting in my body, you're going to experience some problems. Many of us have had misunderstandings. Many of us have had misadventure, and many of us have been, gotten DUIs because somebody didn't fix the tail light. You ever have a DUI because the mechanic didn't fix the tail light? So I started to have a lot of problems. Every year that went by, I had more and more problems. And I started to have problems with people. Now, you live life, moving forward, but you understand life looking backward. And so one of the things that recovery and the steps asks us to do is it really asks us to inventory. It really asks us to assess our lives, to really look deeply at, the causes and conditions of our failure at life, to really understand what our behavior was and how our thinking impacted our behavior. This is part of recovery. So we get a really good understanding, I think, of, what was going on back in the day. But back in the day, I just thought I partied. If you came up to me and you said, Chris, you might have an alcohol problem. You might have an allergy, and an obsession and an unmanageable life. I would have looked at you like you were absolutely crazy, because I party. Everybody parties. And so there was no seeing really the truth of what was going on in my life. But I was being driven by something within me to seek comfort, to seek some type of comfort, to seek a filling of this vacancy within me, of just not feeling right. I'll tell you what I know today is that when I first read it in the book Alcoholics Anonymous, I got pissed, because it said selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. Self had defeated us. There's a lot of lines in there like, we have to quit playing God. All this stuff that I really kind of took offense to when I first saw it. I see just how pertinent it is today. I was separate from you in a way that was alcoholic. I was not in union with you. I was not in unity with you. You were out there, and I had to figure out how to deal with you in here. So there was a separation. You know what I mean? And it's painful living a life like that because you're all on your own. And that drove me into the drug experiences, the alcohol, drinking alcohol all the time. And it just got worse every year that went by. I mean, I lost a family behind drinking. I lost driver's licenses many times behind drinking. I crashed 9 cars in drunken blackouts. I could stay on the road as long as I remained conscious. My problem was I drank so heavily that unconsciousness thing really wasn't too much in my control. So I would pass out and I would crash the car, and I would do this over and over and over again. And if you would come up to me and you would say, Chris, like you look at what alcohol is doing to you. Look at how alcohol is ruining your life. Look at, you're going to walk for 4 years now. Your family has left you. You've got a terrible job. You're living back home with mom. Like, don't you see what's going on here? And I just would not have been able to conceptualize that it was the alcohol. I'm the guy who comes to after a third DUI with a summons in my pocket, and I say to myself, I got to stop driving, because it's just so difficult. It's so difficult to go after the thing that it's only temporarily filling this vacancy now, but somewhere between drink 7 and drink 9, you know what I do? You know what I do somewhere between drink 7 and drink 9? I do this. You know what I mean? Like it all falls off of me. And you want me to stop doing that with my life as screwed up as it is? So there's, and then I come into AA and I see step 2 up on the wall, restore me to sanity. What do you mean by that? Are you saying I'm insane? Well, where it concerns alcohol, I am strangely insane. And that's what makes this illness, alcoholism, so fatal for so many people, is because alcoholism does not allow us the dignity of an accurate self-appraisal. We cannot see the truth for the false. And we have to fall into a series of circumstances, whether it's treatment or a halfway house or somebody that's 12-stepping us. We have to fall into something and be pulled into something and start to get well before we really can start to see the truth from the false. And many of us don't have that opportunity. Many of us get that opportunity and turn our backs on it. But what happened with me was, this was a typical day. This is a typical day for me in my last 4 or 5 years of drinking. I would come to wearing the clothes that I had passed out in the night before. And I used to pass out sitting at a desk. I was not a bar drinker for many years because I would always get arrested or something. And so I drank in a room in my mother's house for like the last 4 years of my drinking. And I would be sitting there drinking, and I would pass out sitting in a chair, and I would land on the floor, and it was a hardwood floor, and I'd put a big knot on my head. And then I would kind of come to around midnight or something and stagger into bed. And I was telling a story one time how every single night I would fall out of this chair, land on the hardwood floor, and then crawl into bed with a knot on my head. And somebody said, "Dude, did you ever think of a throw rug?" You know what I mean? No, I actually didn't, because I wasn't planning on passing out. So I would pass out, and I'd come to the next day in the clothes that I was wearing the night before. And I would stagger into the bathroom, and I was a smoker then, so there was some vomiting that would have to happen to get my day started. I'd throw some water on my face and I'd walk out and I'm shattered, right? Because I drank like a quart of vodka the night before and I'm 130 pounds. And I would stagger out to my car, and it was like a old Quaalude car. It was a 1976 Ford Granada with white walls and no muffler and no heater. Somebody be riding with me and they turned the heater on. It would spray antifreeze on the inside of the window. I'm like, keep your hands off of that. All the tires were bald, and the clutch was gone. There was no emergency brake. The license plate didn't match the registration, and there was a question about legitimacy of my driver's license, all that stuff. And I would drive off to work just shattered. And I'm an electrician at this period of time who works for an alcoholic contractor. He's out drinking at the bars every night, so it's not so unusual to have like an alcoholic worker. But I wasn't a very good electrician. I blew a lot of stuff up, including myself quite often. But anyway, I'd get off to work, and my head would just be listen, it was not a hangover. We glorify it by calling it a hangover. What it is it's ethyl alcohol poisoning toward the end of our drinking. We have put so much ethyl alcohol into our body, we are poisoned, and our body is reacting to being poisoned. And that's what we're experiencing, in the morning when we come to. So I'm at work and I'm saying today, I never want to feel like this again, ever. I never want to feel like this again, ever. So today I'm going to give up drinking. Today's the day I'm going to give up drinking. Now, here's the thing. If there was a polygraph guy and he'd wrap my wrist with the lie detector and ask me that question, Chris, are you ever going to drink again, ever? I would have been able to say no. And that needle would have stayed right on true, because I meant it with every ounce of my soul, that I never wanted to feel this sick again. I know that it's the alcohol that's making me that sick. But what would happen is I'd get half a sandwich down. I'd rehydrate. You know how you got to drink a half a gallon of something to rehydrate? And quitting time would be coming. It's like 3:30 and quitting time is at 4. And I'd start to think, that decision to give up drinking like for good, that might be an overreaction to this whole drinking thing. As a matter of fact, we might need to modify that decision because it's kind of unreasonable. It's an overreaction, never stop drinking forever. And what I would do is I would modify that decision. And as I'm driving home from work, I would go straight to the liquor store and buy another quart of vodka and drive right home and start drinking it. Now think about this. The sanest thing in the world when you're poisoned from alcohol is to say, I'm not going to do that anymore. That's really bad for my health. It's unpredictable. I get arrested a lot. I've lost all my friends. I think I'm going to quit drinking. That's a sane and sound idea. In the afternoon, sober as a jaybird, in the afternoon, I change my mind. That's what I think. I think that I change my mind. I just changed my mind. I know I made a decision to quit drinking, but I've changed my mind. Now, that's insane. That is insane. So I didn't see it that way. I saw it like I just changed my mind. I'm a partier. Now, many of us are caught up in that. They call it a strange mental blank spot that precedes the first drink. The subtle form of insanity that precedes the first drink. And that really, I believe, is the crux of powerlessness. We're asked to admit that we're powerless over alcohol in step one. And that's really difficult for many of us. It was difficult for me. for me to basically say I didn't have any control over whether alcohol went back in my body again or not was a very, very difficult concept for me to embrace. But I believe today that I need to access a power, a spiritual power. You can call it God, you can call it a spiritual power. I'm unconcerned with the label you put on it. But I will tell you this, that there is a necessity of gaining access to some type of power that can keep me from changing my mind and putting vodka back into my body. There's got to be some power that will enable me to do that, or I'm dead, because alcoholism is progressive, and I wasn't, doing very well in 1989, when I finally separated from it. So through a series of circumstances, crazy circumstances, I end up in Alcoholics Anonymous. It happened because I went to treatment. I went to IOP first, and that was to get my driver's license back. This is back in like 1985. You want your driver's license back, dude? You got to go to 8 IOP meetings and 8 AA meetings, and then we'll talk about whether you can get your driver's license back or not. So I had to do that. So I signed myself into this IOP, and you got to understand, I was not collaborative with the process. I was doing this to get my driver's license back, you jerks. And I remember the first night I went sober, to IOP, because I didn't know what was going on. But after that, IOP was at 8 o'clock. I got off at 4 o'clock. I didn't have a driver's license, and there was a bar in between work and IOP. What do you want? What do you want me to do? So I would show up at IOP drunk as a hoot owl. And I remember we'd be watching the Father Martin movies, right? And I'd raise my hand. I wanted to critique Father Martin. So I'd go into this 20-minute rant, about Father Martin doesn't know anything, and I was the most disruptive person. Finally, they brought a breathalyzer in to the IOP, because they knew I was trashed out of my mind, and I had to stop that nonsense. But anyway, that was like 1985. I was years away from making a firm decision to separate from alcohol. Now, by 1989, I was desperate. I was desperate because I could, every single day I'm driving to the liquor store after work, and on the weekends, I would get as drunk as you can get, go into a blackout, pass out, start drinking right away, drink until I went into a blackout, passed out, I'd get drunk 5 times on a weekend and try to pull out of it for work somewhere Sunday afternoon. It was a mess. It's a terrible life. It's a lonely, pathetic, decadent way of living, and something had got my attention, and I signed myself into a 28-day treatment program. Now, here's what I didn't get. I thought that treatment was gonna treat me, and I was gonna be fine. Like you go to the hospital for an operation. You stay 2 or 3 weeks, you come home, you're in recovery, you get better, everything's fine. I thought that's what it was about, and they did suggest that I go to some AA meetings and some further IOP, and I did that. But I didn't get that I needed to find an answer for this powerlessness. I needed to find an answer for the obsession of the mind that creates a belief system that I can put alcohol back in my body, and the AA meetings and the outpatient just weren't cutting it, even though I was really, really, really desperate to separate from alcohol. And if there was I don't want to drink meter in any of the AA meetings that I went into, I would register higher than anybody else there. I can guarantee you. Alcohol was killing me, and I want to separate from it. Thank you. I just don't understand all these prayers and all this sharing, and I don't understand any of this, but I'm coming, And what happened was, I'm on the way to an AA meeting, and the thought crosses my mind that I'm not doing this IOP stuff like full, I'm not really participating. And the AA meetings, I'm kind of sitting in the back and I'm not sharing or getting to know anybody. I'm going like it's castor oil treatment, like I have to go. I'm there a minute before the meeting starts. And as soon as I let go of your hands at the Lord's Prayer, I'm out, And I bet if I bought a gallon of vodka and I drank that gallon of vodka, it would create such a situation that I would run back to IOP and I would run back to AA and I would give this thing everything I got because it would remind me what it's like to be drunk. And I would feel so bad. It would, it'd be like a shot in the arm, but a gallon of, it'd be like a shot in the arm for this recovery thing. So the obsession of the mind doesn't care what it needs to tell you to get alcohol back in your body if you're separated from the power. So if it has to convince you that buying a gallon of vodka will improve your recovery, then that's what it'll do. And that's what I did. I bought a gallon of vodka to improve my recovery and I drank it. And it didn't go very well. What happened was I was drinking, I couldn't separate from alcohol again because of my alcoholism. I was now back to drinking every moment I could for about 7 months. And then Christmas 1989 happens, right? Christmas at Chris's. I'm at my mother's house and my brothers and sisters are there and there's nieces and nephews and there's cats and they're playing Christmas music on the piano and there's presents under the stockings are hung by the chimney with care. Everybody's just real cheerful. And I start drinking my Christmas drink, which was Johnny Walker Black. Anybody else have a Christmas drink but me? Am I weird? But I would drink Johnny Walker Black on Christmas and Carl, somebody said something. You know how they are, right? With family, somebody said something. And I went into an absolute violent rage and destroyed Christmas for everybody. When I came out of that blackout, they were all gone. All the presidents, everything, they were gone. They went to upstate New York to have Christmas. And I was so devastated because I don't want to be that type of guy. You know what I mean? Like, listen, I've never met an evil alcoholic. I've met a lot of alcoholics that have done some evil things. What happens is we're not bad people. We're not dumb people for the most part. But we do dumb things and we do bad things and we suffer emotionally from those things. We come in with tragic amounts of guilt and shame and remorse from the crap that we've done because we know it's wrong and we're being driven into this behavior by complete intoxication. And I just couldn't be that kind of guy. I couldn't be the kind of guy that would blow up Christmas for my family. I just, and make it a terrible scene. And so I said, now, I don't care what the hell happens, I'm not going to drink. And I went into the DTs. And if anybody's ever been in the DTs, they're not real fun. What happens is there's animals that are running around you, and for me, there was big animals scratching on the house. There was maggots all over the slipcovers. I was hearing marching bands, just sheer terror, waves of terror. And like a demon comes out of the ceiling to eat my face and I freak out. All just terrible DTs. And finally, with like 3 days of this, not a wink of sleep, I couldn't even keep water down. I finally got to the point where I was coming back to some kind of health and some kind of reality. And I got in my Quaalude car, and the first thing I did was I drove to an AA meeting, and I was shot. I hadn't slept, but something was pulling me back. Like I knew that there was something in Alcoholics Anonymous. I knew that there was some answer there, and it may work for me. I wasn't convinced it was going to work for me. It may work for me. I don't have any other plans. So I show back up in Alcoholics Anonymous, and this time, for whatever reason, I think it was willingness that was being pushed by desperation. I did what I was told. I did my job, my fellowship job. And what my fellowship job was: consistent meetings, get a sponsor, get a home group, take commitments in the meetings. All the fellowship stuff that we're taught, if we have a good home group, we're encouraged to do these kind of things. Say yes. If they need help putting away the chairs, this is so long ago, we had an ashtray commitment, clean the ashtrays. I mean, anything like that. I became a secretary over here, a treasurer over there, and I was going to about 12 meetings a week. And that was probably for my first couple of years. But I want to talk about something before I turn this meeting back over, because this is a very, very important piece of my story. It was important. It was important for me to understand. Now, from the outside, I looked like a great AA member doing everything an AA member should do. I mean, if you looked at me from the outside, you would see that. Every meeting you go to, I'm there. I go early, I stay late. You see me at the diner afterward. You know what I mean? I got road dog friends that I show up at meetings with. I'm doing all that stuff, and you would be mistaken, but you would see like an AA member in good standing doing their job, and I was for my fellowship. But remember, I told you about the for want of a better term, because it's hard to describe this stuff with English language, that there was a spiritual vacancy within me. There was something that was making me restless, irritable, discontented. There was something separating me from you. There was something that was making it very, very uncomfortable for me to keep going to these AA meetings, very uncomfortable to keep talking to you. I was forcing myself to do all this stuff because none of it was coming comfortably, because it just seemed like, like I was on my own with this. Now, that didn't go away because of all the participation I was putting into Alcoholics Anonymous. But I didn't know what was wrong. I just thought, I was different. Like, I'll give you one, for instance. Everybody's got this guy at their meeting. Oh no, he's raising his hand. Oh no, he's raising his hand. Oh, please don't call on him. Whatever you do, don't call on him. Oh, they called on him. Oh my God, no. He's going to take the meeting hostage for 5 minutes. He's going to talk all the crap about his family. Oh, now he's grateful. Oh, isn't it just wonderful that he's grateful? That warms the cockles of my heart. I think I'll go outside right now and slash all 4 of his tires. And then at the end of the meeting, I'll walk out arm in arm with him to his car, because I want to see what gratitude, how it stands up, and like, this is the stuff that's going through my head when I'm sitting in these meetings. But I can't tell you that. You'd throw a net over me, so I'm sitting there like, thanks for sharing, so I'm just, resentment is just rolling over me. Self-centered fear is rolling over me. The shame and the remorse is just rolling over me. And this guy, Radio Shack Mike, comes up to me one day and he hands me a set of 90-minute cassette tapes. And I'm like, what are those? And he goes, I didn't much care for this, but you're pretty hardcore. You might like this. I go, well, what are they? He goes, it's a big book workshop. This is like 1990, right? I go, a big book workshop? I go, the book they give you in treatment? I had never been to a big book meeting to this point in time. They didn't have them, around my area at this time. So he goes, yeah, it's a big book workshop. I go, who's doing it? He goes, a couple of guys from Arkansas. I'm like, oh my God. So I do the math, like 8 90-minute tapes. That's 12 hours. So he makes me promise to listen to this. And I do. I start to listen to it. And immediately I'm really pissed because listen, when your ego, when you perceive that your ego is attacked, you will go into a defensive posture. And my defensive posture was, these guys don't know what they're talking about. Because what they were saying to me was, Chris, if you're not taking the steps as they're laid out in the book Alcoholics Anonymous, actually taking them, then you don't have an AA program. And if you're an alcoholic, you're probably going to drink without an AA program, because that's what an AA program is. Now, to my knowledge, in my environment, I didn't know anybody that was going through the book Alcoholics Anonymous and taking the steps. Not then. Today, you can't shake a stick without hitting somebody doing it. But back then, it was like 12 and 12 world, right? So I got really annoyed with this information. This can't possibly be true. They're not talking about it in the meetings. My sponsor's not talking to me about any of this stuff. This can't possibly be true. So I just shoved the tapes aside and I ignored it. There's a line in the book Alcoholics Anonymous, in Working with Others. It says, if you've disturbed an alcoholic about their alcoholism, this is all to the good. And I understand that today, because what Joe and Charlie did was they disturbed me about my alcoholism. They disturbed me and gave me a consideration that quite possibly I wasn't participating in my own recovery. We all get lifed. You show up in Alcoholics Anonymous, after a while, you're going to get lifed. It can be a divorce. It can be a death of a parent. It can be incarceration. It can be real serious illness. We get lifed. And what happened to me was I was about a year sober and I got lifed. The girl that I had started to date, it didn't work out. Surprise, surprise, two ding-a-lings, not making a bell. I started to get letters from Florida that had terminology in them, fleeing to avoid prosecution, because I had spent some time in Florida, not real well. And I had lost my job because there was a downturn in the economy and I was in construction. So all those things hit in 1 week. And emotionally, they clobbered me. They absolutely clobbered me. And many of us, and unfortunately during this COVID thing, we're seeing a lot of overdose deaths. We're seeing a lot of suicide. It has ticked up like crazy. And I believe it's because we're disconnected from each other. Some of us dig this Zoom, some of us don't. But these rates are really ticking up. We are way more likely to take our own life through suicide than non-alcoholics are. And I got to a point where I was feeling suicidal. And the jumping off point for me looked like this. I can take my own life. I can go to the booby hatch because I'm flipping out. I could drink again. And the thought crosses my mind, or I could take those Joe and Charlie tapes out and start listening to them and blow the dust off of my big book and maybe try this thing called the 12 steps. And this is another area where I think it was the divine, presence of God acting in my life, that I didn't take one of those three options, that I blew the dust off the big book and I got started on working through the step. Here's what I learned from that experience is I believe we come in with broken spirits. We have disappointed so many people. We've broken so many promises. We've let so many people down, people we love, people that we care about. We've just disappointed on 1,000 different levels. And if you do that, it's going to impact your spirit. We come in here with broken spirits. What I believe the 12 steps are designed to do is they're designed to bring us back into community. They're designed to bring us back into communion with our fellow man, to repair some of the damage that's gone on before, and to get in touch with this power that we need to have some form of relationship with, because it's that power that keeps us safe and protected from the next drink or the next drug. And these steps bring about an awakening. They brought about an awakening in me. They awakened my spirit. And what that looks like is, it does not look like I'm a perfect person. You know, having had a spiritual awakening, Chris has become perfect. No, that's not even close. But I'm awake now. You know what I mean? Like, I'm awake. I know the truth from the false. I see things as they really are. And if I see alcohol at a party, I react sanely and normally as if it's a hot flame. And so I see reality today in a different way. And another thing that this awakened spirit has brought about with me is it's created a service ethic in my life. We don't become perfect in this recovery process. We don't become perfect by working these steps. You know what we become? We become useful. We become incredibly useful. And sometimes, some places, you know, we can carry a message that will be of help to other people. You know, I see a bunch of people on here I have an amazing amount of respect for. Carl, you're number one among them. But Robert's on here, Bill C's on here, Steve L's on here. You know, you got a great meeting going, and I feel very, very lucky that you asked me to participate in this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. That was absolutely amazing. Just spectacular. Really, it was nice to watch the New Jersey sunset.